So we're in a series called Show Up Different. We're talking about how we can show up in our lives in an anxious world, in a stressed out world, in a constantly moving world, how we can show up different with the fruit of the Spirit, right? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. This is the verse of the month, actually the verse of the 2 months, okay? So we're going to be talking about this verse every single week, and hopefully, can you hand me one of those? Hopefully everybody has gotten these. My lovely assistant, thank you. Give her a hand. All right. Hopefully everyone has got one of these. We mailed them out if you weren't in church Sunday, and I was able to figure it out with our database. We mailed you one. If you did not get one in the mail or last week, would you raise your hand? We have a few more to give out. Anybody? We got 2 in the back. We got 2 over here. We got 1 over there. All right, keep your hands high. Be proud about it. Get those books. So these are study guides that authors in our church wrote, okay? So each week is a different person. They need 2. Samuel, come on. Unbelievable. Here. Yes. And I will order more. So that's what I wanted to see. If anybody didn't get one, or if you're online and you didn't get one, go to ourcitylight.org/showup, and you can send me it's a form you fill out, and I will bring more next week if you didn't get one. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so you're supposed to do those during the week, and it's a study guide. Each week is written by a different author in our church. Pretty exciting. I'm loving it. Okay, so I did the first week. It's the worst one because that's the one I wrote. All right, fruit of the Spirit. So how did you do this week? Showing up in love. How did you, remember last week's tagline was, and all that we do, lead with love. Let's lead with love. How did you guys do with your kids, with your friends, with your family? I asked for testimonies over email, and I got 0. So, no, just kidding. I got 1. That shows that you're doing really badly, honestly. So you need to try harder. Send me stories, because that's the first part of each teaching. I'd love to talk about some stories. So one person that I know of was in a grocery store, and they were behind someone who was checking out, and they kind of held up 2 different items, and they had to pick between the 2 of them because they couldn't afford everything that they had gotten. And so the person from our church in line thought about the teaching, leading with love, and showing up with love, and so what the loving thing to do here would be. And so they said, just put it on my tab. They said, put it on my, I don't know what you say at a grocery store actually, but ring it up for me. And they paid for it, and it was a small act of love right there. I know another family decided to, sat down as a family, decided to do something in love. And so they made meals for 3 families in the church. It's pretty awesome, right? And so it doesn't have to be big. It could be small. It could be big. It could be medium. I don't care. And it's also daily, right? We're trying to get it into our system. How am I showing up? And am I showing up with the fruit of the Spirit? I'll tell you, it was a struggle for me this week. The example that I gave, and maybe I played the example a little too hard. Some of you walked away last week thinking I hated children. I don't. I love children. If you weren't here last week, it's okay. You don't have to listen to that part of the teaching. I love children. All I was saying was occasionally they can be annoying. I think we can all agree. So this week, my dad was over, and Eden did the thing that I struggle with, which she says my name over and over and over and over and over and over, right? And I turned around and I said, "What would you like?" And it was obviously exaggerated, trying to show up in love. And my dad laughed at me while I'm trying to show up in love. He called me out in front of my whole family. So anyway, there were a couple times this week where I responded. Actually, it's the difference between reacting and responding, right? I reacted instead of thoughtfully responding in love. And then I thought, well, that's probably not the best I can do. So this week, I want to talk, before we get into joy, which is the next one, I want to talk about how fruit grows. And not from a horticultural standpoint, okay? Is that the right word? Horticulture? Yeah? Yeah, okay. So I want to talk about how fruit grows in our life. So I want to read to you 14 verses. This is Jesus from John 15. And don't worry, it's going to launch us into our discussion of joy. But this is, I think, something that is really important. So Jesus says, in one of his more famous parts of his teachings, I love John 15. In fact, if you ever want to do a month-long study and just stay in one chapter, this is the chapter. All right, he says, "I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful." There's a whole teaching there. We're skipping it. "You are already clean because of the word I've spoken to you. Remain in me as I also remain in you." So he introduces this concept, right, of remaining together. "No branch can bear fruit by itself." What are we trying to do? We're trying to bear fruit, right? Fruit of the Spirit. Keep up, guys. All right, okay. Fruit of the Spirit, bear fruit. All right. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. So, no one's like, wow, I chopped that branch off that fruit-bearing tree, and now the branch doesn't bear fruit. I don't understand. Like, we all get it, right? Like, it has to be part of the tree. So he's saying if you want to bear fruit in your life, if you want the fruit, and I don't think he's just specifically talking about the fruit of the Spirit, okay? This could be other fruit, but let's talk about fruit of the Spirit. If you want to bear the fruit of love and joy and peace and patience in your life, you're not going to be able to do it if you're not connected to the vine, if you're not in Jesus, okay? I am the vine, you are the branches. Kind of tells it over again. If you remain in me and I remain in you, you will bear much fruit. But apart from me, you can do nothing. So again, he's trying to center us in on like, hey, it's not about your effort, right? You don't see trees going like, pop, right? And then they produce fruit, right? I hope you got that, okay? You never lose that image, okay? And just like us, it's not like try harder to be loving, right? It's I need to draw closer to Jesus. I need Jesus to reshape my brokenness and my broken heart and bring healing to my brokenness. And then out of my relationship with Jesus, the more I experience his love can flow from me, right? If you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that's thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire and burned. That doesn't sound fun. Don't do it. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. Again, followers of Jesus should be showing up different. We should be bearing fruit. As the Father loved me, so I have loved you. Now remain in my love. Look at all the relational language. Remain in me. Love. Stay connected. If you keep my commands, you'll remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. Interesting. We'll come back to that. I've told you this so that you're what? You can say it. It's okay to talk in church. Good. Joy. So your joy, half of you are like, oh, we weren't paying attention, Christian. Sorry. Right, you've been reading for like a half hour. Okay, I've told you this so that your joy may be so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. Okay, so he's told us all this stuff so that we can have the fullness of joy. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love is no one than this, to lay down his life for his friends. You're my friends if you do what I command. I mean, he's just like, it's like a roller coaster that's like gets up and then it gets faster and faster and faster and faster. Like as you read John 15, it's like it just gets more and more and more and more and more. It's like, okay, whoa, what is Jesus saying here? Okay? I think he's saying two things. That in order for us to grow fruit, we need to abide in him. Okay? That it's not about just your effort, trying harder to love, trying harder to be peaceful. That he's inviting us into a relationship that will change us from the inside out. Okay? That's why we believe at City Light that discipleship starts on the inside. It starts between us and Jesus. But he doesn't just say abide, he also says obey. And I know that is complicated. And we'd rather have it be simple, like I want one or the other. But a lot of the time, following Jesus is not simple. And there's a tension often between two things that seem like they might be different. He's saying, hey, don't try so hard. And then he's saying, hey, try real hard. Wait a second. Right? He says, look, it's all about love. And he says, but if you love me, you'll do what? You'll obey my commands. Wow. That's a word for, like, our culture is very anti-authority right now, right? We don't want anyone telling us anything. And yet Jesus says, if you want to be in love with me, do what I say. How often do you hear that preached nowadays? But it is like word for word. I'm not making this stuff up. So how do you do both? I love how Paul sums it up. Later in the New Testament, Paul writes a letter to the Corinthians, and he says, it was by the grace of God that I am what I am. So not by my effort. This is totally by the grace of God. God did this work. By the grace of God, I am what I am. And his grace to me was not without effect. And you see this thread all through Scripture where there's a marriage between God's providence and man's obedience. And it's not something you can pick apart and be like, well, that was just God and that was just man. He longs to walk with us. That's why if you remember last week, we talked about the fruit of the Spirit, and he invites us to keep in step with the Spirit. There's an obedience and there's the Spirit. He says, this grace was not without effect. No, I worked harder than all of them. Yet not I, What? But the grace of God that works within me. So is it God producing fruit or is it us producing fruit? And the answer is yes. And we don't like those kinds of answers. And some of us are more like, but it's really just the grace. And some of us are like, nah, it's really my effort. And like whatever side you're on, you need to learn the other side more. Right? If you're like, it's about me, I got to work harder, then you might need to hear how God is loving and gracious. Okay? And if you are just like, oh, it's all about God, and you're like, just not motivated to do anything different with your life, like maybe God's love should motivate you to change some of your poor habits. Right? So there's a marriage of both. So if you were sitting there wondering, oh, how does this fruit? Because I've heard the teaching before on the fruit of the Spirit. Has anybody heard that? Where they're like, but it's not anything you can do. You just got to, like, because trees can't grow fruit. Like, it grows naturally. And I walk away from teachings like that being like, okay, so really, I'm off the hook. Right? If I'm not loving enough, it's God's fault. Seriously, I think that's cheating what's actually going on. I think it's a both and. That if I want to be a more loving person or joyful person, I need to draw near to the source of love and joy. Every day I need to be making a choice to be closer to Jesus. And in those moments where I have choices to choose love or not love, I need to make choices. Because my choices define my actions, and my actions define my character. Right? Like you don't look at someone and say, well, they had great intentions, they're such a person of good character. No. It's what we do and what we say that actually defines who we are in this world. So if we're going to show up different, it can't just be, well, I've prayed a lot about being loving. It has to be, I've chosen love often in the face of adversity. I've chosen joy often in the face of unjoyful circumstances. So how do we show up with joy? That was like a prequel to my teaching. Once in a while, you have to give 2 teachings on a Sunday. And there you go, bonus. How do we show up with joy? That's what we're going to talk about today. And we have made a video with some testimonies from people in our church that's going to be a little bit different each week. And so here's today's. All right. You guys ready? Okay. Oh, shoot. Oh, no. It's okay, I got it. Don't kill me, Janine. Just leave it there. No, go back to the one before. Don't look at this. Okay. I need 3 people who think they're good at basketball and want to win a $5 gift certificate, or $10. We'll put $10 gift certificate to Amazon. All right. I see Ernest. Come on up. Hey, you're my son. I can't get it. Somebody else. No. Megan? All right. Come on up. Is there anyone not in their 20s? Okay, Ethan, come on up. All right. So it's just the back row, apparently. Okay. So, that's your basketball. And that's yours. They're spiky. Here you go. I was going to say, Ethan, if you didn't catch that, you were not going to be able to play. Okay. All right. So here's what I'm thinking. So I want you to walk that way quite a long ways. Keep going. Keep going. I want you to that table. Yeah, that's where you're going to start. All right. So, Megan, your number is 3. Ethan, your number is 2. And Ernest, your number is 1. No. So I need you to remember those numbers, okay? Because it's going to matter as the game progresses. So first round is you just get 1 shot. And I'm going to need some help catching these because no one's going to make it. All right. Go ahead. You go 1, 2, 3. We all have all day. All right. Rejected. That's a great defense. Oh. Bro, if you made that, it would have ruined the entire demonstration. Cannot believe that. And Ethan, can we just say, would you agree you're the least likely person to make that one, too? Okay. I mean, nothing against Ethan, but. All right. So what were your numbers? Megan, also, you didn't even get it past the first stanchion right there in the air. You know it's not bowling, right, Megan? Okay, just making sure. All right. So whatever your number is, you get to take that number of steps. Okay. Go ahead. Shoot again. That was your step? All right, that works. All right, round 2. Okay, that was worse. Better? Oh, this is going to be interesting. All right, guys. Take the same number of steps. So 1, 2, and 3. There you go. Megan's getting closer. Megan, you can, if you need to shift sideways, you're allowed to. That won't count as a step. Like if, no, not your, I'm just saying if you need to scooch over, never mind. Okay. Stop helping you people. All right, go ahead. Oh, that's close. All right. Ethan and I are now just having a catch. I like it. Oh, that was so close. All right, take your steps. Sorry. Oh, that was definitely cheating. Okay. All right, this is your chance. If you don't make this one, I think the game might be over. All right, come on. Oh, a little short. I mean wide. I should have stood behind it. Okay. All right. Megan, your pride is really on the line after these steps here. Come on. Is Megan allowed to play defense? Man, I really should have. Okay, this is it. For all the $10. I know. Oh. Oh. I'm so glad you made that. All right, good job. Good job, guys. All right. Nicely done. All right, let's give him one more round of applause. Good job, guys. All right. So now we can put up that slide. Oh my gosh. All right. So my argument today is that distance is the opposite of joy, okay? The closer that Megan got, and the rest of them, the closer they got to being able to win the coveted $10 Amazon gift card, right? So as we at church continue to promote, materialism. So anyway, distance is the opposite of joy. That's what I want to just talk about extremely briefly this morning, apparently. So that's the problem with doing games on Sunday morning. By the way, if you're new-ish to City Light and we've never done a game before, my disclaimer is I did youth ministry for 20 years and I can't stop, all right? So also, I don't think it's fair that all the kids get to have fun in church and we don't, so we're going to play games every once in a while. So distance is the opposite of joy. Look at what he said. He said, I told you so that your joy may be so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. What are the things he told you? I have told you what? Well, the Father loves you. Jesus loves you. Remain in our love. Remain by obeying our commands. Specifically remain by loving each other, okay? Because those are all proximate commands. Remain in love. Remain in love with the Father. Remain in love with the Son. Remain grafted in like a branch into a vine. Remain by obeying. Remain by loving each other, being proximate to each other. Okay? The things that destroy our joy are when we're distant from God, when we're distant from each other, when we're distant from our purpose, when we're distant even from things in our life that seem difficult and we try to keep them at arm's length. When we try to keep these things at arm's length, we prohibit joy in our lives. And joy comes when we get close to what matters most in our lives. Joy comes in our life. You think about joy. Now listen, I think out of the 9, joy might be the hardest one to teach on, certainly, and think about joy. Because it feels like when we think about joy, we kind of think about being happy, and it feels very circumstantial, right? I'm happy when things are good. I'm sad when things are bad. What is joy? How is joy different than happiness? So I want to kind of reframe it from just my circumstances are going the way that I hope them to be going, and say, can we be people of joy? So we show up in unjoyful situations that lack obvious joy, that we show up not with obnoxious joy, we're that person, but that we are people of joy. We're people who you look at them and you're like, I don't know how they're going through this in their life and still having a sense of joy. And I would argue joy is deeper than happiness, right? Happiness is kind of surface level, it's circumstance-based. Joy is more of a deep thing that's dependent, I would say, on God. So the first path to joy is to get closer to God. We're going to talk about 4 things that I think we need to be close to. And when you find yourself becoming distant from them, you will see your joy levels decrease, okay? So the further you get from God. Now listen, I want to just say, quick disclaimer. If you're here today and you're like, well, great, God, I'm not even sure I'm a Christian right now. Like you said it was okay for me to come to City Light if I didn't believe. And yes, but I would be a bad pastor if I didn't put this up here, right? Like, I do believe this to be true, which is why I'd love to help you find a relationship with Jesus. But the other 3 points are things that you can do even if you don't believe in God. All right, but first and foremost, getting closer to God is what brings us joy. David wrote in Psalms, you make known to me? Make known to me. I read that wrong. You make known to me the path of life. In your presence, there is fullness of joy, and at your right hand are pleasures forevermore. See, what you and I are looking for in life is found in God. And that is just a statement that you could build your life upon. Just think about, what is it you're looking for? What are the things that we chase after? Security, it's found in God. Acceptance and belonging, it's found in God. Redemption for our past mistakes is found in God. Strength to get through, perseverance to not give up, faithfulness to be the person you hoped you would be, these are all found in God. What we're looking for, and listen, what the world is looking for, and this is why we exist, right? What we're looking for is found in Him. And we so easily, I think, do a disservice to Jesus and Christianity and all that stuff when we forget that and we start to make it all about the form and the function or the rules or the morality. And morality is all part of it. And like all that stuff is part of it. But when you forget that like this is about a person that in Him we find all that we need and want in life. Like the things that drive human beings, the ultimate source where we will find contentment and therefore joy is in Him. So, the closer we get to God, the closer we get to joy. And the further we get from God, the further we get from joy. David writes in another place, restore to me the joy of your salvation. How many of you would say that you enjoy your relationship with Jesus? How many of you would say, I'm not asking for you to raise your hand, sorry. Close my eyes, okay. Just think about it. Do I really enjoy my relationship with Jesus? Do I feel like I'm in a relationship? Or does Christianity feel like it's been a lot of rules and it's been a lot of standards and, going through the motions, like has it lost its life? The closer we get to Jesus, the more that we can rediscover. See, some of us need a renewal today, and that's going to be the thing that you take home, is you need a renewal in your faith. That faith has to come alive for you again. That it has to not be about just going through the motions, just checking the boxes. That it doesn't have to be about arguments and trying to figure things out. That there's more to it, and you're going to rediscover the joy of your salvation. So, face value at the beginning, how do we become people of joy as we get closer to God? It's kind of what I talked about already. So, number 2 is we get closer to others. And this is not just like biblical, it's proven in kind of like social science research. There's one study I read about that did a longitudinal study of men that they followed for 80 years. And they discovered that the more meaningful relationships that they had, the higher their levels of happiness and joy were. And that's like one study, but there's tons of studies. In fact, there was another study I read where they, instead of like deep, meaningful relationships, they just studied people. They did a really surface level interaction with a stranger, okay? And so it was like half the people went into a coffee shop and just got their coffee and left, and half went in and had an interaction. And then they studied their levels of happiness and joy afterwards. And people who had just had a little bit of interaction with a stranger had higher levels of joy. It's really interesting. We are built to want and desire community, right? So this is why he says, I want your joy to be complete. And then the next thing he says is love each other. There is something about connecting with each other, even for introverts, right? Introverts just do this usually on a smaller numerical scale, but on a deeper qualitative scale, right? Like introverts tend to have a couple people they go really deep with. And people like me, I have lots of people I keep it really shallow, right? And just no one goes really deep. So, just kidding. We need this, and you know this, right? You've been in those situations where you've been around people who they care about you, you care about them, and you walk away and your spirits feel lifted, you know? We know we need this. We need this sense of belonging. We need this sense of someone knows me and I know them. And I want to tell you, like, at City Light, this is one of our goals, is to have everybody at City Light do more, okay? And this is good. Like, we love being together as the big group. I love it. I love Sunday mornings. But there's more. I love Monday nights, too. And Monday nights, just my small group. I love worship team practice. We just had worship team practice this past week, and it's just a small group of us doing something for Jesus together. I love serving together. When we go out and we do like Good Neighbors or Paris Foundation or Foster Well or 1 and 7B, we do something together. I love that small group stuff that happens where you share life, where you do stuff together or you share your life together. We all need that. And our goal at City Light is to have everybody in at least one of those smaller groups. We say that circles are better than rows, right? Where we can face each other's faces instead of looking at the back of each other's heads. There has to be something in our Christian walk, even if it's only 3. Like, there's these things called triads that people do, where it's like, I have 2 other friends that I'm going to be intentional about getting together and talking about life and faith with. Not just life, but faith. We're going to pray and we're going to read our Bible. We're going to grow as Christians. We need this in each other's lives. Because listen, isolation is really just insulation, right? When I isolate, I'm really just trying to insulate myself, keep myself safe so that I don't have to be vulnerable. But true joy is found when we allow people, safe people. I'm not saying everybody. Don't go on Facebook and just put your stuff out there, okay? But like, we all have to have somebody that we're real with, that we share the depths of our heart with, our dreams, our fears, that we talk about our faith with, that we ask the hard questions to, who's not going to judge us, but who's going to stand with us, who's going to know when to shut up and just listen, and who's going to know when to not be quiet and speak up and call us on stuff, right? And if you don't have those people in your life, that's part of why you go to church, right? You don't go to church just so you can hear a message on Sunday and say, I went to church. That's like even though, that's a whole other teaching. Stay focused. But right, you come here to be part of a family, to be part of a movement, to be part of a people, that we're a people called by God, and you need to do this, right? Not this. You need to connect in. God's calling us to that, because distance is the opposite of joy. Just remember the basketball. Okay. Number 3, we need to get closer to purpose, okay? What I mean by that is, the further away we are from doing stuff that really matters to us, the less joy we're going to have. It's so easy to fill our time with stuff we have to do, and like, there's something good about that. People that don't do stuff that they have to do are called irresponsible. So we all have to do stuff we have to do, but we all should also do stuff that we want to do, stuff that we were created to do, stuff that makes us come alive, stuff that after you do it, you don't feel tired, you feel energized. We all have to find those things, those purpose things in our lives. Paul writes this really neat verse. He says, I have great pride in you. He's talking about the Corinthian Christians. I'm filled with comfort because he had sent a friend to check on them, and the friend had come back with a report. In all of our affliction, right, he's been persecuted, he's being hunted, I am overflowing with joy. Why can he say he's overflowing with joy? Because he is like in them, like that's his purpose. His purpose was to preach and see churches raised up. And when he heard that they were doing well, even in his affliction, he was able to have joy because he was doing what he was created to do. How often do you do what really scratches that itch for you? You know what I mean? Like, are you a writer? Like, when's the last time you wrote anything for anybody? Are you a musician? When's the last time you picked up your instrument? You know, are you someone who loves to gather a team and attack a project? Like, when's the last time you did that, or maybe did it for God? Do you like to work with your hands? When's the last time you used those skills to like serve other people? I'm going to add something to purpose. It's not just leaning into your gifting, but it's also serving others. There's something about being a follower of Jesus that puts this seed in us that when we give it away to other people, we find joy. There's something about when you go serve someone else, like if you did the exact same job in your house, you would not have joy. You might have lots of other emotions, but if you did it for someone else, you walk away and you're like, you just feel, you know what I'm talking about? And then you're probably like, well, you like squash that feeling. I don't want to be prideful. I need to be humble, right? But like, there's something, it's okay to feel good when you help other people because that's who we're made to be. It's like you're letting it come out and shine. Like the light of Jesus in you wants to come out. It's like begging to come out. And we like, you know, when we live life selfishly or just for ourselves or just for our kids and like our checklists and our calendar, it's like, I need to get out. And then when you serve someone, you bless someone, you give sacrificially, the light of Jesus comes out and you just feel this release of joy. That's like the most abstract thing I've ever talked about. They'd be like, wait a second, there's a light inside of us that's knocking. How does light knock and then it comes out? I don't get it. Did you know it's kind of are you with me? Whatever. Okay. Once in a while as a teacher, you just like start down a metaphor road and you just go, right? And the wheels come off, but you don't stop. Okay. Say it with me. Distance is the opposite of joy. The further you are from God, the further we are from each other, the further we are from our purpose. We're just going to be less joyful. And here's the thing. You're not going to be like, I'm further from God. Now I'm feeling less joyful. What you're going to be like is, man, I'm just not particularly joyful lately. And there's this thing in counseling called tracing the fruit to the root. You can always find the fruit easier than you can find the root. Also true in horticulture. A lot of stuff I'm talking about today. The light from within comes out and plants a tree, and then you trace the fruit to the root. Got it? All right. So when you look at the fruit, and the fruit is lack of joy, the fruit is easily frustrated, the fruit is maybe like down, kind of depressed a little bit, all right? I'm not talking about clinical depression. That's a whole other teaching. You know where we care about mental illness, but that's not what I'm talking about. So, all right. But there's that fruit of like, lack of joy. You trace it down, and you're like, oh, I haven't hung out with anyone in a month. I haven't done anything that really matters to me and who God's called me to be in a year. Maybe that's why I don't have joy, okay? Worship team, come up. Last one is this. You're going to love this one. You got to get closer to your pain. What we love to do is we think that by avoiding our pain or ignoring our pain or avoiding painful conversations or painful situations, that we'll be happier, right? But it's a lie because you won't be more joyful. You might be happier in the moment, but you're not going to be more joyful. One of the most famous verses about joy in the Bible is this crazy verse here. Consider it pure joy when life is hard. That's my summary. And the reason is that we find God in pain, and again, the source of all joy is God. We find God in pain a lot easier than we find him in other situations. But also this, because we're followers of Jesus in our pain, and if you're not a follower of Jesus, this is part of the invitation. This is why we feel so motivated to invite you to know this person who's changed our lives, is because Jesus, he gives us these promises that as followers of Jesus, when we're in pain, we know our pain won't last forever because one day Jesus will come back. Even if our pain lasts till the day we die, one day Jesus will end all pain and all sickness and all suffering and all tears. We know in our pain it won't last forever. We know that God never wastes pain. So every time you're in pain, every time you suffer loss, every time that you're grieving, every time even that we're sick, those are all things that God uses in two ways: to make us better people, more like him, and to bless other people with our testimony. When you see followers of Jesus, can I tell you just a quick story? No, I don't have time, but I'm going to anyway. Early Christians, like in the first 100, 200 years, the way that they suffered, go read. There's a really interesting book by Timothy Keller about suffering. And the way that they suffered was one of the largest parts of their testimony, because the Greek philosophical culture of that day couldn't handle suffering. And yet they saw Christians who had hope in Christ in the midst of suffering, and it drew people to Christianity. Not because they were great preachers or had tons of money or big buildings, but because they suffered well. And second, third, we never suffer alone. In all of our suffering, we will be with God. He will be with us. When I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil because you are with me. So when we're in pain, we find hope and we find Jesus arguably like no other situations in our life. In fact, like a lot of theologians have talked about this, like the dark night of the soul, these changes in your life that could never have happened if you didn't go through those times. C.S. Lewis famously said, that God shouts to us in our pain. He uses pain as a megaphone. Like he whispers to us in the good times, but he shouts to us in our pain. We find God. And so lean in. We don't need to avoid painful situations as Christians. And all of those go together because you'll have God and you'll have each other. So, distance. It's the opposite of joy. The further we are from God, from each other, from our purpose, from what we are called to do in this world, and the further we go where we try to hide from our pain or avoid our pain or compartmentalize our pain, when we create distance from these things that are meaningful in our life, the fruit of joy withers. And you won't notice it until you notice it, right? And then it's like, why am I so frustrated? Why am I so lacking joy? Why am I always kind of like, instead of really feeling that release of lightness in my life, like feeling that joy? Maybe it's because you've been distant. So while we sing this last song, I want to invite you. Yeah, we went way over. While we sing this last song, I want to invite you to think about those four things. Because I don't want to just run you out of here. Part of the reason we do church is because we actually want people's lives to get better, right? We want people to grow in faith. So take some time, think about these four things. We're going to have people over there that could pray for you. If any of those four areas you feel that you're distant and you know that your joy is lacking, then come on over and get